So Armored Core 6 just released, and here I am with not a dollar to my name. So instead of playing the formerly semi-obscure mecha game with customization options and fun combat, I'm going to talk about a different semi-obscure mecha game with customization options and fun combat. It wouldn't surprise me if you haven't heard of this one, because it doesn't even get a mention on the developer's wiki page, or the developer's website for that matter. Then again, maybe it does. I don't speak Japanese, I'm just going by the box art. Phantom Crash originally released in 2002 on the original Xbox to decent reviews, but I don't really hear many people talk about it, which is a shame because it's good. If you were looking for something in between the slow, lumbering movement of MechWarrior and the anime speeds of Armored Core, and don't mind it leaning into something a little more arcadey, this would be my first suggestion. The core game loop here is fairly simple. Build a mech, the game refers to them as Scoobies, take it into an arena, and fight for cash. Come back, upgrade your mech, rinse, repeat. Immediately you'll notice the lower stakes compared to the other games I've compared it to. I think that this is to the game's benefit. It gives the whole thing the feel of a sports game instead of a military exercise, despite taking place in the ruins of Tokyo. Which is good, because the characters are already ridiculous, though the translation issues probably aren't helping here. So having the tone of a sports game has them come off more as overzealous fans instead of the whiplash of a little girl driving a tank in the middle of World War II. Which is fitting because the game treats this combat as a sport that they call rumbling, and the dialogue between the characters reinforces that. There's a lot of dialogue, and it's unskippable. At least I thought it was. Turns out you can skip it by pressing both analog stick buttons and pulling both triggers at the same time. That's certainly a choice. I wouldn't have ever guessed that, and probably would have kept assuming that they were unskippable if I hadn't been able to check the game manual. It can be easy to forget, but most old games were made with the game manual as part of the experience. You were expected to read them before booting up the game. Obviously the game teaching you how to play is the superior experience, but it was a good place to put information about the controls, and it was always nice to see lore bits in them, or see them written as if they were from in the game themselves. Phantom Crash's manual is mostly an explanation of the controls and menus, with short character summaries, so it's nothing incredible, but I'll still put a link to it in the description if you want to see it. Thanks to Bayoness on Reddit for the upload. So the chats between characters aren't great, but I do appreciate how it gives characterization to your rivals, which helps to create a more vibrant tone to the game world. Seriously, the characters range from stock anime tropes to some absurd conversations, while AI companions wax philosophical about the meaning of existing. Just don't expect to go into this looking for the quality of Nier. What I can praise without reservation is the character takes that pop up as reactions while in the arena. They're simple, and they're repetitive, it is an Xbox game after all, but it gives a dynamic feel to the characters that otherwise probably would have been written off as that side thing that you have to deal with to get to the fun part of the game. Speaking of AI companions, one of the parts that are required for running your Scooby is a chip that contains one of these AIs. Mechanically, they affect the size of the lock-on window, the speed of the lock-on, the frequency of the repulsion shield, basically free damage absorption, and critical hits. They also give commentary on actions you take during a match, each one with an individual personality, like the Fatalist Wolf I use. The mechanical difference means you're likely to lean into a favored one. The wolves are good for min-maxing, and the birds are good for ranged platforms, for example. But the difference they have in identity make them feel like actual companions instead of a glorified GPS. While we're talking about mechanics though, something that immediately struck me as interesting was that you don't have a starter mech. Instead, you're given a bunch of money, the game calls it new yen, and you can take that money to any of the shops and buy from there to get started. You have 3 choices for mech design, and outside of chips and paint, the parts are designed for a particular brand and won't work with the others. Or you can rent a Scooby if you want to try one out before investing in it, although I think the other choices are better. Renting will immediately assign you a Scooby without any ability to choose. There's a reason the game doesn't talk a lot about this feature. That's a lot of complexity to introduce to a player right away, a common problem in games featuring customizable mechs. Thankfully, it's not as bad as it seems. You're really only given 3 choices that you can actually buy instead of the potential 9+, one from each company. And you were given a preview of how the Holy operates in the intro with Pepper, so you can fall back on buying something similar if you're not sure what to get. You could, in theory, build one from scratch from the module shop, but I doubt a new player would be drawn to doing that first. There's plenty of potential for an experienced player to customize their experience from the starting gate, and a new player should still be okay. Any choice will get you playing well enough to make it into the game and can be adjusted later. It's not hard to recover money, as long as you keep in mind you can leave at any time. The game manual itself even states, The point of rumbling is to take down as many opponents as possible and make it back safely. Outside of that, you stay in the arena until your Scooby is destroyed. If your Scooby is destroyed or loses parts, then you have to pay for the repairs to cover what was lost. So we have a fun risk-reward scenario where you have to balance your desire for more money with the danger of staying on the field longer. Supplies are occasionally dropped in the arena and provide extra health and ammo as well as new yin, but won't repair destroyed parts. You get more new yin for every opponent you destroy as well as from destroying objects scattered around the fields. If you're careful about managing your health and ammo, then there's really no time limit. You can stay in a match as long as you feel like it and leave when you're done. Your main objective in each match outside of earning as much money as possible is to defeat each area's area ranker. This, combined with the schedule changing each day, is how the story progresses. The schedule resets after 60 days, so if you want to continue playing after the story or haven't finished, that won't be a problem. To encourage you to not get a little money and immediately leave the match, the area ranker won't spawn in immediately, and you'll have to survive in the arena until they enter. The area rankers are essentially the bosses of the game. They have unique behavior, equipment, and sometimes chips. They feel like another Scooby with just enough to set them apart to stand out as rivals, even getting their own introduction when they enter an arena. It's more of the same fighting that you would have been doing, but raising the stakes a bit and giving more character. If you had been playing more passively before, you now have a target to gun for to make progress through the game. The area rankers are divided into A through D classes, with what is essentially the final boss as the first ranker. Each day will have a set rank assigned to one of the game's 3 maps. Class D and free ranks are free to enter, but past that there's an entry fee for other ranks. Each raise in class increases difficulty but also rewards. This is pretty common stuff and you should be used to seeing it, especially in sports games or games focused around tournaments, but that helps with what the overall tone of the game is going for. When you've beaten an area ranker for a certain class, then you'll see a mark noting that you've beaten it already. Even then, you'll see the area rankers show up in later ranks, giving a sense of familiarity to your rivals. You fought these people, you know them. You can still run each rank again when they appear on the schedule if you need extra cash, or want to test a new build before risking it in a higher class match. If not, you'll be looking at one of the other 2 maps. Technically there are 6 maps because each map has a day and a night version. The layout doesn't change, just the lighting, but the game counts them as separate. The 3 layouts are distinct and keep the game engaging despite the limited number of arenas. When you choose a map, you can see a full overview of it before starting with every other player currently in the game. You can even get more information on them and their mechs before starting and see how much destroying them would be worth. If you see a bunch grouped up by a starting gate, you may decide to start at a different gate to get your bearings, or since you can enter an arena with a shield, you may want to try engaging them immediately and doing as much damage as you can while you're protected. Each map has distinct escape routes from the gate, so if you get overwhelmed, there's a way out. Shinjuku is a more proper abandoned city with ruined buildings in the center of the arena, which can be used for cover or gaining space vertically. But it also distinctively has flat open streets surrounding them, which is for Scoobies that like to gain speed and keep on the move. This is the map I prefer to test new builds in if I can. Its mix of terrain features makes it easy to switch between playstyles quickly and see which one works best for the build I'm using. Shibuya has 2 distinct arenas, one by the starting area with holes that drop you into different parts of the lower levels, and a large pit that takes up most of the map. Between them are a series of tight corridors with no room to jump and a limited room to maneuver. It basically locks you into a fight in an open arena with limited cover, or close quarters hit and run style combat. Since my preferred kit is a speedy gun platform, I usually find myself in the pit. You can camp the drop points in any of these maps, but this one feels designed around it. The supplies will slowly descend into the pit, creating a race to destroy other Scoobies fast enough to take the supplies yourself. Or you can destroy the supplies, preventing anyone else from taking them. The ramp around this part of the arena feels tailor-made to highlight this possibility. Aqualine is interesting. In theory, it's the most open of the maps. It's essentially one long rectangle from one gate to the other. While there are walls to prevent you from seeing through to the other side, it forms a sort of inner rectangle, and across this inner rectangle is another level above that can be accessed at any time. So the vertical difference isn't a consideration for a certain area or sniper kits, but for everyone at all times. Around the outside of the whole map is a lower area, useful for quick escapes for when things get dangerous. If Shinjuku encourages mobility across its outside, then Aqualine encourages being mobile vertically. The game highly rewards being able to move around the map effectively, and gives you a bunch of tools to aid in that. Your jump is boosted, so the longer you hold the jump button, the higher you'll go, up to a point, which is fairly standard. However, if you press it again while you're in the air, you'll be rocketed to the ground. Combine this with the emergency dodge, which you can use while in the air, and you can be as mobile off the ground as on it. There is a pause during both the initial jump and the landing, which means you need to plan around the transition, but it gives you incredible versatility if you can master it. The AI starts simpler earlier on, so it's not going to ask too much of you. Some will seem to just stand there and take shots, so you have plenty of time to adjust to the pace of the game. It's not without any challenge though. You'll still be destroyed if you get careless or greedy, even in the lower ranks. If you can plan your build well enough, you can make a Scooby that can tank hits that destroy lighter opponents, or a mech that can appear from nothingness to unleash a burst of hellfire before vanishing into the night. If you're skilled enough, you don't even need that, as you can use the emergency dodge to keep out of lock-on range, or even to dance between the missiles your opponent fires at you. Speaking of the emergency dodge, it originally was bound to pushing the left analog stick twice left or right, which works alright, but also to the black and white buttons on the controller. There's an obvious preference between which of these methods to use on the original controller, but on a 360 controller these buttons were bound to the shoulder buttons, which end up being even more intuitive. It feels like that's where they were always meant to be. This game was ahead of its time in more ways than one. The flow of the game is very much in the style of an arena shooter, but despite having a multiplayer option, it came out in a time before online multiplayer was easily accessible through consoles. It would be great to see this get a remake on PC with online support, but even just the single player is more than enough for a fulfilling experience. I do have a suggestion or two if you decide to go back and play it. The first, and probably most noticeable issue, is the sound design. It's actually quite good, and I love the little bell sound that plays when a hit successfully lands. It's just, the sound of moving forward, particularly on rollers, can overwhelm everything else. So I would highly recommend turning down the sound effects volume. You may need to turn it way down. The music can also come in a bit quiet, so this helps with that. Speaking of music, don't forget to go to the music shop, where you can find a variety of interesting bands and genres you can load into a playlist to listen to while you play. It seems obvious, but I kept forgetting to do that the last couple of times I played. Maybe that's just me, the store's right there. Try giving the characters a shot before skipping them. The characterization does help, and you might find yourself liking them. Also, it shouldn't need to be said, but save often. If you're not playing this on the original Xbox hardware, the game has a tendency to crash at the worst times, and it doesn't have any form of autosave. Even with the crashes, I highly recommend a playthrough. It's a good game and deserves more attention. It apparently got a sequel called Steel Lancer Arena International on the PS2. I never got a chance to play it, but maybe I'll take a look at it someday. For now, thanks for watching, support me on Patreon, and most importantly, have a nice day.